Starting the show today with Nancy Pelosi. I think she's got to be among the top, her and Karine Jean-Pierre and the president. Anyway, go Nancy.
How do you feel about the push by the House Republicans? Many of them, the Speaker has certainly, flirted with this idea of impeachment proceedings against, President Biden because of unfounded allegations that he was involved with his son Hunter's businesses.
Welcome to GAMcast for August the 10th, a rainy day in Georgia, as they say. We started this show with Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, it turns out. Anyway, we'll get to Pelosi. But I'm going to talk about a lot of things today. It is an exceedingly slow news day. Not a whole lot going on, which tells me that we're probably very close to another Trump indictment, either in D.C. I think the next thing that's going to come up is going to be an incitement charge over the rally, which at this point, we've talked about this. There are no guardrails. They can just do whatever they want. They can just literally invent things in the van before they go in to pick him up. So we're going to see something like that. But anyway, for whatever reason, they don't want. There's no real news that they're really pushing today. So that means, as you know, I have a lot of things to talk about. So we're going to talk about basically where we are and where we're headed. And unfortunately, we are headed down the road further and further and further into fascism. And the Democrats just don't, for whatever reason, don't realize it, and they're not stepping back at all, and we're not anywhere close to backing off. So it's going to continue down that road. Now, at some point, it's going to have to be stopped, or we're just going to ultimately be a completely corrupt regime. I think, as you know, that eventually people are going to wake up and it's going to push back, and it's all going to be because of the founders, because I don't think you can quite go all the way under this system, because we do have the First Amendment, we do have the Second Amendment, we do have the power to push back, and you can't quite suppress it. I mean, but it is scary that even under this system, how close that they can get this far. And this is the farthest they've ever gotten in the American system by far. And before I get to Nancy, part of the reasons why we have this problem is that the first thing, before they tried to take over America, they first had to take over the institutions. After they took over the institutions, the next institution they tried to grab and have grabbed was the Democrat Party. That was key. It's very key, is that you got to get a foothold in various institutions like the colleges, get a foothold in the media, and by media I mean movies, I mean television, I mean news, right? Then eventually you're ready to go grab a political party. I mean, Hitler talks about this in Mein Kampf, when they tried literally a coup. They didn't go to the Capitol and walk around. No, that wasn't the kind of coup they did. They actually had guns. They actually captured very powerful people in a beer hall. And I mean, I'm talking like the leaders of the people. And it was a real insurrection in the way it was done the old ways. Now, apparently, insurrection has morphed. And now you just walk around the Capitol with some zip ties, sit on Nancy Pelosi's desk, put your feet up, and all of a sudden now you're the Speaker of the House and soon to be President. But I digress. Anyway, after that failed attempt, he got sent to prison. I forget who he went with. Was it Goring? It doesn't matter. Whoever he went with was another high-ranking Nazi. And he basically dictated Mein Kampf, which in German is German for my struggle. And he lays out there everything he's going to do. It's not a great work of art, but it is interesting to see him lay it out. And one of the things he lays out in that book, and you need to read this book to understand leftism, is he says, we're never going to try the coup. We're never going to try the revolutionary route again, ever. That's just a waste of time. He's wrong about that, because people have actually taken over countries in revolutions. For example, I'm broadcasting from one. Anyway, I digress. But the important thing he said is you have to get it peacefully. Then you do the revolution from the inside. And he's exactly right. And that's what we're living in the middle of. They've taken over the Democrat Party. Now they're using the levers of government to take it over from the inside. That's why it was so key that Trump had to go. But it was equally key that Biden had to win. And Biden was a key for them. In other words, even if Kamala had won, it would have been a problem. I mean, I think they can control her, but therein you missed the point. I must have somebody that doesn't campaign and prove to you, campaign, you don't have to campaign to be president, somebody who can't speak, somebody who's clearly not functional, somebody who everyone can see, but they'll accept it. That's key for them. That's why this next election, whenever Biden does step down, and he's going to step down, I've told you my plan before, when he gets 50% and then they can select the person. But let's just say, hypothetically, this could easily happen, right? Let's just say that he's so incompetent that he loses the first 2 or 3 states. And they're sitting there going, wait a minute, you're not even going to get the 17% we need to add with our 33% of super delegates to select the person. They'll come up with another way to get the person they want. At this point, it's way too powerful, right? But anyway, the reason they had to have Biden was to establish that. And the reason they had to have the mechanisms that they have, too, is to get you used to the idea that you can't complain, twofold, really. One, you can't even challenge elections anymore. I don't care how much conduct that goes on, you can't challenge them, right? And number two, if you do challenge them, that you're the problem. And we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show, because it's one of the things that I want to talk about and get you ready for. But anyway, part of the problem with the Democrat Party, and is that there's nobody dissents. If you dissent, you're out. Okay, Dershowitz doesn't matter. Longtime Democrat, you're gone. Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat all her life, you're gone. So, and there's a key to that. And so, because of that, we're not going to see any pushback. We're not going to see any ability to right the Democrat ship. It's going to have to just be completely obliterated as a party. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's going to have to go the way of the Whigs and some of the Federalist Party, some of the other early parties in America. It's been a long time since we've lost one, but we'll see. But anyway, let's hear what Pelosi has to say. And again, I want you to understand how corrupt all this is. I mean, this is MSNBC, which I don't, people believe it's news, but it doesn't even really masquerade as news, so it's kind of a joke. But Andrea Mitchell is also a correspondent, if I'm not mistaken, with NBC. So the unfounded allegations. Now, how the heck does she know that? I mean, that's not even remotely journalism. That's not even a question. The unfounded allegations. They're allegations. Unfounded is an opinion. But anyway, let's hear what Nancy Pelosi has to say about the obvious corruption of the Biden crime regime. But before I start that, I want you to understand what's going on, right? The Biden crime machine is... the reason they're not going to push back is they're all doing it, right? And they're all in on the club. That's the club, folks. We're not in the club. The club is D.C. I think it's the richest, by far, the richest counties in America are right around D.C. Why is that? What industry, what do they do in D.C.? Do they have oil like Texas? I don't think so, right? Do they have media empires like New York and California? I don't think so. They don't have anything. The only thing they have is that they're the seat of the government of the 330 million people that are forced to send that money there. But they've gotten us to accept that idea that, well, that's okay. And now they're taking it one step further. You'll not only send us the money, but we're like bookies. We're going to take 1% of it. So I don't know how much we're going to take in this year. Probably 4.5 trillion, something like that. Maybe it's 5 trillion. Doesn't matter. I didn't get a chance to look it up for the show. Actually, it's right here. Well, whatever. I'm not going to look at it. Doesn't matter. Let's say it's 5 trillion, right? 10% of 5 trillion is 500 billion. Now we're just going to spread it among ourselves. And that's why it was a key also to have Biden, because he's always been corrupt. Everybody knows that. If we can get this guy elected to be president, Anyway, so now the Republicans have taken over. A little bit of a snafu, not a problem. The regime kicks in, the hive mind kicks in, and we're all going to defend this obvious corruption. So listen to Pelosi, who people hail as like this great leader. Right? She is as corrupt as Biden is. And she helped turn the Democrat Party into what it is now. Because she's one of these people that lacks compunction. It doesn't matter what you do. She's going to defend it. But anyway, let's hear what she has to say about the obvious corruption of the Biden crime regime.
As you well know, as you were very cautious about starting impeachment proceedings for the very reason that once you start in a special committee or the Judiciary Committee, it's very hard to stop that process.
We're going to talk about Andrea Mitchell in a minute, and I only listened to this bit once before I started the show. I'm sorry. Oh, my God. You were very... oh, my... How is this people think this is even news? I mean, or even a free press. But anyway, let's listen to Nancy Pelosi.
Well, with all due respect to your question, this is frivolous. This is a diversionary tactic. They just can't stand the fact that we had a job report of over nearly 200,000 jobs today, that unemployment is 3.5%, that 18 straight months of unemployment being under 4%. We're talking about 13.4 million jobs created with Joe Biden in the White House and working with the congressional Democrats. They have to change the subject, and they have nothing to offer the American people in terms of jobs and the rest. They talk about it, but then they change the subject when it's time to deliver. I'm so proud of the Democrats and the Congress. We fully intend to take back the House.
Okay, look, folks, two things just happened there. Okay, first and foremost, she didn't answer the question. Did they even talk about what Biden's accused of? So if you are on MSNBC, and this is where a lot of people get news, and if they don't get news from MSNBC, they get it from the alphabet networks, which is not quite this bad, but close to it. You would literally sit there and go, yeah, these are a bunch of numbers. Wow, these numbers are all good. But the Biden, it's unfounded. I heard it was unfounded. There's some allegation, but it's unfounded. And then Pelosi, and again, this is brilliant. And look, when I was in law school, one of my favorite classes, I took as a sophomore, which is not really sophomore because law school is only 3 years, but you get the point, was a tax. I can't remember the name of the guy. I'm getting old. I can't remember the names as well as I used to, but he was a brilliant guy. I think he'd finished #1 at Yale, and I'm not really even sure why he was teaching, but he was. Anyway, and tax was a great class. It just was a great class because I enjoyed the subject matter. It's a very interesting subject matter. It's kind of a blend of liberal arts and a little bit of science-ish, you know. And the other thing I loved about it is we would spend, the classes are about an hour. We would spend the first 40 minutes talking about tax, and then he would feel like we had enough tax for the day, and he would just start talking about life. And he would somehow, it was amazing how this guy could tie tax into every facet of life you wanted to imagine. And one day, he would tell this story often, but he'd tell this story that, when it comes to borrowing money, right, if there's no moralism in it, right, everybody is incentivized to borrow as much money as humanly possible, right, so that you die with the highest amount of debt that you could possibly have. Now, again, if they'll give it to you, which they won't, right? But if they will, if they'll continue to let you pile on the debt, pile on the debt, pile on the debt, pile on the debt, right? And at some point, let's say, just so you understand what I'm talking about, let's say today, I went out and bought a Maserati. Now, I might be able to pull that one off, okay? And then tomorrow, I got rid of my house. No, I mean, I'm going to keep my house. And I go buy a mansion. I might be able to pull that off. By the time I get to the third thing, I don't want to buy a private jet, they're going to be like, whoa, no. No. You got some decent income here, and we'll give you some, but you're done, right? But what if they didn't? Let's say, oh, yeah, okay, you want a private jet? Fine, get a private jet. Then what if I buy a yacht? Yeah, go ahead, right? If they would give it to me, why wouldn't I do it, right? The only reason I wouldn't do it is if A, they wouldn't give it to me, or B, I had some moral conscience, right? So what we're living through here, right here, is the breakdown of any boundaries. Right? In other words, there's no moral boundaries here. This party clearly doesn't care about the damage to the country. Now, to be fair, I think people like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, in their minds, they're thinking, America will be fine. America's always been here. America's good. All these people that say you keep doing this and we're going to have fascism and people are going to start attacking people. And well, I've been doing this for years and I've made hundreds of millions of dollars and nothing bad has happened. Right? That's a problem. So when you see this breakdown, people like me start screaming, wait a minute, you've broken down the only check and balance we had, right? So you don't have a media. You can lie with impunity. Those used to be checks and balances. They're gone. So now I'm just going to sit around and hope to God that moral people are sitting in the chair. Jesus help us, because they not. And I know that, again, if you read The Road to Serfdom, this is the type of people who will come forward when you have this system. Now, let's get real quick onto the lies she told there. And this is the other point I wanted to make. And I'm going to make it throughout the show today. If you were to start today, right, I told you I've been trying to lose some weight, trying to get back to my pre-COVID weight. I've actually lost about 13 pounds now. Problem is I lost it before, and then I kind of gained 5 or 6 back. So now I'm back down, the lowest I've been in a while, and I'm continuing to go that way. And the point I make is I started this right around the new year, and it's taken me, about 8 months to lose 13 pounds, right? I'm heading in the right direction, but it's taken a while. To get down to my pre-COVID weight, it's probably going to take another 8 months at my age, right? And the things and the ways that I'm doing it. But at least I'm heading in the right direction. But the point I make is this. When I decide to make a change, it takes some time. A country as big as America, if we were to start today to fix this problem, today, we might luckily fix it in 4 or 5 years. That's if we start right now. And we're not going to start right now because we're not going to possibly start until the November election. And then that's not going to start until January 6th of 2025. Right? And even then, all you're going to have, maybe, if it's a clean sweep of the Republicans, you're going to have to start implementing things. And that's if you're lucky, because the whole machine is going to be designed. Remember when Trump, when he got elected in 2016 and took office in January 6th? Well, he took office in January 21st of 2017. You get the point. But they had the Senate and the Congress, and they were able to get literally jack squat. They got a tax cut. That was about it. So now I'm hoping they take power again, they can change it. But we're nowhere near to changing it. And so the point she made there, she said this, obviously, folks, unemployment, the way we look at it, is no longer a metric that anybody should pay attention to. And if you listen to any podcasters, and I still do occasionally listen to this person, and they keep mentioning the unemployment rate, you need to just stop listening to that person about a lot of things, right? That person may have good qualities about certain other things, but in terms of politics, they don't know the first clue what they're talking about. Things have changed. It's just like when Walmart took over for Sears, right? And Bill Clinton, he did this in 1992, used it brilliantly. He started talking about how, well, this is the worst economy in 50 years, and look at mammoth companies like Sears, they can't make it. Yeah. Things have changed. We're no longer going to go to a store to buy everything under the sun. And it's a long reason why Walmart took out Sears. But the point was that had happened, and society had changed, and we're the better off for it, right? Nobody wants to go back to the typewriter. We've seen the computer, right? Nobody wants to go back to not having hard drives, right, and putting the floppy disk in and all this stuff, right? Nobody wants to go back to DOS, right? We've seen Windows, right? We've seen that. We're not going back, right? And so the problem is you have to understand unemployment is no longer a good metric, and it's the gig economy. Now, she knows that, and I know she knows that. You know why I know she knows it's the gig economy that's falsely giving us the impression that employment is so low? You know why I know that? Because she's the architect of the 87,000 IRS agents. You know what those 87,000 IRS agents are designed to do? Go after the gig economy. So I know she knows about it. And just so you understand, the reason unemployment is low is because all that flood of people that quote unquote have jobs, quote unquote, they're not considered for that because they're no longer looking. If tomorrow we got rid of the gig economy, unemployment would shoot up to about 9% overnight because all those people would then be counted as people looking for work. There's two ways you can lower unemployment. You can have jobs, right? So everybody has a job, or you can diminish the number of people looking. Which one you think is happening right now? And again, I'm not going to sit here and debunk the 13 million. That's been debunked so many times, but you got to give them credit. It's debunked. They tell the lie again. You debunk it, they tell the lie again. It's debunked, you tell the lie again. We're going to get to Clarence Thomas today. They're working that rap. So one other thing that I hope that those of you who listen to the show do is I have a lot of knowledge because I've been following this stuff for over almost 50 years. And so a lot of people don't know this, but do you know who Andrea Mitchell is? Do you know what Washington, D.C. is? I mean, honestly, I'm not picking on anybody here, but do you know who she's married to? I want you, when you think about Washington, D.C., folks, part of the reason these people, they've been able to take over the Democrat Party, they've been able to take over the media, right? And part of the reason they can continue to maintain that is they have a private club and you're not invited. So even if I don't get part of the millions that Joe Biden gets, even if I don't get the millions that Nancy Pelosi gets, right? I get crumbs, but it's a system, right? Right now I'm just getting $400,000, $600,000 a year, right? But I'm going to work my way up and I'm going to get in that system. Let's say I never get in that system. Let's say, hey, keep me, and all I get is my $200,000 a year plus government pension for life and get to go on the TV shows, and I never get to make the millions. Well, I have a chance to, but maybe I don't. Doesn't matter. You know what? I'm better than you. It's just like the slavery system. You hear all these people talking about, wonder why in the world the slavery system managed to last so long when 99% of the people didn't own slaves. The top planter class owned slaves. The rest of them, they worked pretty much as hard as the slaves did. They didn't own them. Well, you know what? I'll tell you why. Because it's like, hey, I may just be a poor white farmer, and I may not even own my farm, and I may work for the man, but I ain't black. I ain't a slave. See? That's how it works. And that's what they've done here. And just so you understand, Andrea Mitchell, she married her second husband, the Federal Reserve Chair, Alan Greenspan, on April 6, 1997. She's married to Alan Greenspan. They're all one big cabal up there, folks. So, what do you think she's going to do? You think she's going to actually do any journalism that might threaten that system that she's a part of? Part of the other reason is, and again, this is a tale that when you see it, but you can't see it enough. So the Oompa Loompa, I've been talking about the Oompa Loompa. He is part of this, ecosystem that they've created. And so the Oompa Loompa, his whole job is to come out and attack Donald Trump and Republicans in general. Now, this tells you the choices that we have. Right now, you have a choice between outright fascism and the Biden crime machine, or, a political party that ain't the greatest shakes in the world. I mean, the Republican Party, they're not that great, but at least they're a political party. And you know what you have when you have a political party? You have what's called dissent. It sounds something like this.
I'm tired of having people who talk about this stuff and don't do it. Remember, Donald Trump 8 years ago, stood on the stage and said, I will balance the federal budget in 4 years. And I will do it because I'm a businessman, and I've always had to balance my budget. This is coming from the guy who went bankrupt 3 times.
Anyway, all right. Maybe if we started to see that in the Democrat Party, maybe you'd start to see some pushback and things would start to improve. Well, we have seen that in some places recently. This didn't make the prior show. It was on the cutting room floor. I considered it several times, and I might have mentioned it as a one-off. But Massachusetts recently declared a state of emergency over the illegals. Now, that's interesting. Now, again, the thing I wanted to talk about earlier, it's going to take a while. It's going to take 5, 6, 7, 9 years. Now that apparently Democrats are coming on board. New York's done the same thing. A lot of these people are like, whoa, this policy, this idiocy that we pushed, now it's, we can't take this idiocy anymore. So it sounded something like this when she did it. So this is one where they do these memes. It's actually townhall.com, which they do a lot of good memes. Anyway, this is the how it started and how it ended. This is the Massachusetts Governor Maura Haley on sanctuary cities. Take a listen.
I think it's really important that cities and towns have the ability, have the exercise the prerogative to label themselves whatever they want to label themselves. And if they want to take on a sanctuary city designation, I think that's great. I think cities and towns are in the position to be able to do that. And I've seen it done as a value statement, as a statement of principles, and I think that's great. I support that.
As of today, close to 5,600 families with children are living in state-funded shelters, hotels, dorms, and other emergency facilities across Massachusetts. That figure is 80% higher than it was just 1 year ago, and it's unsustainable.
Okay, so anyway, but the point is, folks, they got us into this mess, but at least now they're starting to recognize the mess, and you're going to start to see progress. But it's going to take a while to do that. But you've got to start seeing progress in a lot of other ways. You're going to have to start seeing it in independent media. You're going to have to start seeing the judiciary pushing back. You're going to have to see colleges start to roll back with look, at this point, folks, our colleges are just corrupt. They're frauds. They're overcharging and under-delivering at an alarming rate. And all these things we know, right, the Democrats haven't even caught up to. But at least they've caught up to immigration. So we should start to see some improvement on that. So again, as part of the plan, and I when I first started broadcasting, I was on Twitter, I think, for about a year, and then I started broadcasting, so I guess it would have been 2021 maybe, so I guess it's going on 2 years now, almost to the day, something like that. I started with this idea, and you do learn some things when you start trying to put these things together, and then you have to enunciate and explain them to other people. And one of the things that I saw, and those of you who listened to the demos and the early ones remember this, as I said, they're trying to build a system where they'll never have to run for office again. And I was able to see that because I'd read a bunch of leftist nonfiction stuff about leftist regimes in the past, and they don't like the idea of checks and balances, right? And so eventually they were going to have to go after elections. Now, there's 2 ways you can go after elections, and the Democrats are doing it both ways. The first way is to create a base of people who are so easy to demagogue that they'll just vote for you. Like, literally, they'll just vote for you. Right. I mean, I remember, I think I've told this story before, but I had a case up in Michigan and I got dropped off in Detroit. And this was probably, I guess I was on my own. So it would have been 2005, 2006, something like that, almost 20 years ago. And, those days there were no Uber. So I got in a cab and I was going from the airport inside to the city of Detroit, which, by the way, is one of the most beautiful, physically beautiful cities I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the masonry just blew me away. I wish I had been there for more than just one day, but I was in and out. Anyway. And she was talking, and there was some governor's race, I guess, coming up. And the whole ride, she kept talking about, well, yeah, things suck, but, I don't know anybody else could have done any better. And the point, she was black, I should tell you that part of it, so she was probably going to vote Democrat no matter what. But she kept talking and talking and talking, and she was just resigned to the idea that, well, I can't vote for the other party, so, but she, as cognitive dissonance kicked in, it was like, but I'm not even going to consider anyone else, right? And that's what the Democrats have built. They built, the climate stuff. We're going to get to that too. All these other things that they quote unquote run on are things that you can never, first off, you can be brainwashed into believing them, so you'll vote for them. And then number 2, you won't even consider an option. There is no other option. For a huge portion of the Democrats, that's the case. Part of the problems the Republicans have is that they don't have that type of a base, right? I mean, one of the reasons we got to this point, which is why you've seen this acceleration that we've seen in the last 6 or 7 years. I mean, it changed fast under Obama. I didn't think it could ever do that again. And when it got to the Trump era, it sped up even more. Right? And the reason is the middle class, which is what the Republican Party is, what the Constitution basically is. It's basically a society of a middle class. It believes in the rule of law. It believes those that work a little harder should have a little bit better off than those that don't. A reasonable safety net, but not a hammock. Right? It's basically what they believe. Well, we no longer are a full majority. You can't just win an election anymore. You got to cobble some other people together. Right? And so when that happened, you've got a problem, because now we got to keep us intact and then tack on a few more. Well, what if you can't keep all of us intact? You can't, and that's what some of these things are designed to do. Anyway, that's a long story of how the Democrats are winning elections right now. Here's the other way they're winning elections, because I think even with all that, basically, which is basically subverting an election, but even with that, you still need a couple of more points, and you got to tack on a few points. And how do you do that? You do that with cheating. It's just that simple. I mean, and cheating comes in at least 2 ways, right? First and foremost, you can rig the quote-unquote voting, right? So it's not really voting anymore, right? The person doesn't really have to do any effort. Like in California, I think, and this is why you wonder why Republicans don't win the national vote anymore. Well, yeah, when you get a 5 million cushion in California, it's kind of hard to overcome that. I don't care how many states you went after that, right? And people there, they mail everybody a ballot. You can pick up a ballot. They don't have any ID. They don't have any signature. I mean, yeah, I could go get you a bunch of votes if that's all I'd do, but they're not votes, right? Anyway. And I could go on. I mean, you don't need 60 days of quote-unquote voting, people. And then on top of that, you get to mail in the ballot. I mean, come on. That's obviously it's not voting. The reason you need to do that is it takes you time in states that actually do have some check and balance, like a signature match or an ID match. It takes time to go and get votes to do that. That's why you got to expand it from one day and then maybe one or 2 or 3 early voting days. You got to expand it to 30, 45 days so I can gather up thousands and thousands of ballots. Well, the other thing you can do is outright rig the machines. And this has happened at least twice now that we've seen in the last 2 years. I'm about to play this video for you, but before I do, I just want you to understand when people say, there's no evidence. That's nonsense. There's evidence. They just don't like the evidence. That's fine, but don't say there's no evidence. I mean, there literally is evidence. Maybe circumstantial. May not be conclusive, but it's evidence. Anyway, so here are the 2 evidences. We know in the Kari Lake race, I played it for you yesterday, I believe, they weren't matching signatures. Now, that's evidence. Is it conclusive? No. I could go get all those ballots that guy did just click. I could go get them, and every one of them could have been a valid signature. I don't know. Maybe if you interview the guy, he'd say, or gal, I couldn't tell who it was, and they'd say, yeah, it was like 200 in a row, and they all matched, and I just figured this is a waste of time, and nobody's really watching, so I just kind of clicked it. And then we go back and we're looking, yeah, it looks like you clicked through 26, and gosh darn, they all matched up. Okay, no harm, no foul, right? But that's not what we're going to find, I assure you. But anyway, set that aside. That's why you got to have people go back and look at it. Well, we both know, at least in 2 instances, and again, let me give you this is evidence of voter fraud. This is evidence of voter fraud. This is more evidence than they have of Donald Trump in every prosecution they have going with him, which will soon be 4 and 5, right? But they got 3. This is more evidence they have on him, all right? On Election Day, machines malfunctioned in Arizona, right? I can prove to you, and you know this, Republicans on Election Day, 90% of them vote on that day. Democrats, exact opposite. 90% of them vote before Election Day and other mechanisms. The system breakdown that occurred on Election Day only hurt in-person voting, which is what Republicans do. That means that a machine malfunctioning had a 90% chance of impacting a Republican vote for Katie Hobbs and a 10% chance of impacting a vote. Anyway, you get it reversed, right? So 90% chance to impact Kari Lake and 10% chance to negatively impact Katie Hobbs. That's enough evidence. Would I get a jury beyond a reasonable doubt for that? Probably not. Would I get a jury on a civil case? I'm not sure. It's close. I'd probably need 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things more to get them, but it doesn't matter. It's still evidence. It's suspicious, and we used to understand that. Well, here's some more evidence. Take a listen to this video. Or you have to watch it. So, okay, this is not the video I thought it was, but anyway, it is on point. So here's the tweet. New video evidence of Maricopa County officials illegally breaking into sealed machines after they were tested, reprogramming memory cards and reinstalling them. 59% of these machines would shut down on Election Day. So again, think about it. I mean, you're sitting there, and this pattern that's developed between the two parties, where Republicans vote on Election Day and Democrats don't, it doesn't take you too long to sit there and go, that's weird. I wonder if we had long lines on Election Day. I wonder if we could magically make it rain and cold on Election Day. I know they can't do that, but right? You sit there and go, man, it sure would be a shame, because it would be a 90% chance we impact them negatively. And if the election is just a point or two, right? And now, of course, they can't make it rain. They can't make it cold, but they can sure create lines. Anyway, so this is the memory card story that broke a couple of days ago, and nobody's debunked it. Nobody's even talking about it. Anyway, I think I told you, but there's a lawsuit right now going on in Houston. I think it started a couple of days ago. There's 4 or 5 of them where literally offices, I think they were for county judge or for some small local office, but very powerful. And the vote separation in a city of like 5 or 6 million people, I think it's the 4th largest city in the country, was like a few hundred votes, maybe 1,000 tops, right? Bunch of polling places. They ran out of ballots on Election Day. Then you go in and you say, well, why didn't you have enough ballots on hand? Oh, we don't know. Well, the law says you're supposed to have 125% of what you had last time. And we've looked at it and it turns out you had 70%. That's what's called evidence, folks. The fact that they broke down is evidence. The fact that there were lines, evidence. The fact that it negatively impacts the candidate loss, evidence. The fact that you didn't have the ballot, evidence. This is all evidence, 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 evidence. When you add it all up, it gets to be powerful evidence. Oh, you want to hear some more evidence? Well, it turns out they're trying to get the deposition of the person who was responsible for the ballots. He continues to refuse to sit for the deposition. You know what that's called? That's called evidence. If that happened in one of my civil cases, right, and I go to the judge and say he won't sit for deposition, won't sit for deposition, the judge says, hey, you're going to sit for the deposition. He doesn't sit for the deposition. He doesn't sit for the deposition. Do you know that in civil court, and you can do this in criminal court too, obviously, you can go and say, well, Your Honor, I want sanctions. What sanctions would you like there, Great American Male? Well, first off, I'd like to pay the attorney's fees to have to bring these ridiculous motions. Granted, sir. Fill out a petition. We'll get your attorney's fees granted. And I'd like a never negative inference. Granted, sir. No problem. So then we go to trial. I get to say he refused to sit for the deposition, and Your Honor is going to instruct you when you go back that you can consider that as a negative inference that what he would have had to testify would have gone against him. That's called evidence. Anyway, so I just want you to know that there's a couple cases out there where there's evidence, because we're going to get to that later in the show here. Just keep that in the back of your mind. But again, when they tell you there's no evidence of voter fraud, they are lying to you. The same way they are lying to you about the 13.5 million jobs that have been created. Right? There's only been about 4 million jobs created. The other 9.5 just came back online magically. Anyway, and again, they don't have to lie about that. If they had a record, right? If they had these things, why wouldn't they just do it? Anyway, all right, so this broke yesterday. Ron DeSantis out there is showing you how government is supposed to work. So he fired this prosecutor in Orlando, and she's one of these George Soros nut jobs that for whatever reason, the law is the law. You're supposed to prosecute. You take an oath to prosecute. Do you have some discretion? Of course. But when you use your discretion and 100% of the time you don't enforce the law, then you're not doing your job. So here's the story from CNN. Governor Ron DeSantis announced the suspension. She's suspended. I guess she could be reinstated theoretically, of an Orlando area state attorney. The second time he has removed a democratically elected prosecutor whose politics do not align with his conservative views. Now, of course, that's the headline. Nothing of the sort is happening, okay? But I want you to understand the subtle little things they do, and it just pounds it into your head every day. Democratically elected. So what? I understand that. So Donald Trump was democratically elected. They tried to impeach him, right? And again, that's what they would do. That's what they do. Well, you know, if that had been a Democrat, and when they get around to impeaching Biden, which given these Republicans may well not ever happen, which is sad. You know, it's funny on that topic. I tweeted this yesterday, and it's true. If Joe Biden doesn't get impeached, there's no more impeachment. There just isn't. I mean, as much evidence as we have about him, there at least should be an impeachment inquiry. You should at least be looking into it, for crying out loud. But that's what that Andrea Mitchell nonsense was. That's why she tossed in that little goodie like, oh, well, I mean, once you start it, you can't stop it. So, you know, again, just more breakdown in the rule of law. But anyway, so didn't align with his conservative views, you say? Well, no. What else could it possibly do? So if you read the article, scroll down. Let's see, where is it? I got it here somewhere. That's not it. Where is it? Here it is. You scroll down the article, you get to the point where is it? Right here. Gosh, where is it? DeSantis, where is it? Attempts as a candidate. Oh, come on. Well, let me find this thing. I don't know. I've had it and I lost it. Come on, I don't need dead air. Here we go. The Florida Constitution allows a governor to remove an elected official for, quote, and this is literally from the law, malfeasance, misfeasance, neglect of duty, habitual drunkenness, incompetence, or permanent inability to perform official state duties. All right, so listen, folks, do you think if you're not enforcing the law, you're not going after people, and she's black, I'm sorry to have to say that matters, but it does, and she's not enforcing drug laws, right, which are still on the books. Query, how's that democracy when that's all still a law in the book and you're not enforcing it? And she's letting violent black offenders, largely, but not all, but mostly. She's not asking for the minimum sentences. If you read the article, you'll find all that stuff. So, do you think a law that says I can remove you for, quote, malfeasance, misfeasance, neglect of duty, it's not in there twice, I read it twice, because that's what I'm thinking it is. I could argue it's also malfeasance and misfeasance, but whatever. Habitual drunkenness, that doesn't seem to be in play. Incompetence could easily be in play. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. I don't know. And the permanent inability to perform such duties. Anyway, so CNN, of course, next sentence where they tell you the law which literally permits him to do that which he did. And by the way, yesterday they were screaming about this as A, of course, racism, and B, of course, fascism. It's neither. Right? You can't prove it, right? I mean, he removed somebody before who was a white male under the same provision, right? So you can't prove any of that. And again, it's not fascism to use the laws on the books. And again, this is what I keep talking about this. They literally just make up words or don't use the actual words that words mean to do whatever they want to do. But anyway, here's the next sentence to show you the tell that CNN is in no way recovering or trying to be news. No previous Florida executive has interpreted the power as broadly as DeSantis. Now, that is a flat-out lie. That's just a flat-out lie. I don't even need to look behind it to know that that's a lie. Complete lie. And there's two reasons it's a lie. Obviously, governors have replaced people before. So that's just, and again, the tell is that power as broadly. What in the F does that mean, as broadly? Give me a break. I mean, that's a nuanced, subjective thing. That's not objective. But here's the other point that you have to make. When did they ever allow people to change their sex? When did they ever allow people to chop off their anatomy or add things to their anatomy the way they've been able to do this? There are so many things happening right now in the last 5 or 6 years that I've ever seen. So how in the world can we compare what he's doing to what people did in the past? But that's how they subtly tell you lies and get things going. Let's listen to what MSNBC has to say about this prosecutor.
DeSantis suspended Worrell, the only black woman serving as a local prosecutor in Florida, for what he says is a pattern of avoidance.
Coincidence. It's a pure coincidence, but they always have to bring out the race.
Mandatory sentences for gun crimes and drug.
I wonder if she's going to bring up the fact that the last person he did the exact same thing to, right, was a white male. Wonder if that'll come up.
Trafficking, as well as being, quote, derelict in prosecuting serious crimes by juvenile offenders. Worrell's pushing back, saying that crime in her district has actually gone down. She's also defending her prosecutorial approach of going after violent offenders while also giving some individuals a second chance. She's the second progressive prosecutor Ron DeSantis has suspended. The first was Andrew Warren after he signed a letter with other prosecutors saying they wouldn't.
All right. She actually does mention, well, she doesn't mention it, but you can see him on the screen. He's clearly a white male. But here's the point I wanted to make there, okay? And when they start calling this fascism, that was in August of 2022. August of 2022. August of 2022. What happened after that? He did that in August, got rid of that prosecutor. Ron DeSantis went to the polls and faced the voters and won an overwhelming landslide. Isn't that democracy there, Joy? Anyway, she didn't mention that either. All right, so here's, folks, and I hate that this will be like the second time. A lot of times I'm criticizing Republicans, but here I'm going to actually criticize Trump. This is actually probably not good for my followers on my show, but we'll see. But folks, I think this is a mistake. And I said yesterday, and this is Trump in the debates. I'm going to play the bit in a minute, but Trump should participate in the debates. Trump should have no choice but to participate in the debates. I understand there are political reasons why you might be able to get around it, but this is one of the reasons why politics, again, I say it all the time, heads they win, tails we lose. This is why, because Trump is playing into their hands. You see, he's not going to participate in the debate. And I understand why. It works for him. But that just means you get around to the idea that we don't have debates anymore, right? And, okay, Trump, let's say you get the nomination and Biden says, I ain't going to debate you. Right? And you go, well, the American people deserve to hear the debate between Trump and Biden. Why didn't they get to hear the debate between you and the Republicans? How do I even know you got the nomination? And we used to have systems, folks, checks and balances that used to keep people like Trump from doing this. And I'm not blaming Trump. Trump's playing the system. Don't hate the player, hate the game. This is the game, and it's wrong.
Are you concerned about Fox setting
Well, when you're at 75, 78, 80%, and other guys are at 0, 1%, 2%, 3%, you do say, what's the upside? Am I going to go up 1 point?
Yeah, as if it's just about you. It's about the people. It's about the issues, right? We can't let politics descend into this. You used to be required to do that. Anyway, so the latest actually there is some quote-unquote news out there. What's happened is this is the anatomy of a hoax. I literally wrote an article at my Substack, greatamericanmail.substack.com, about these hoaxes. And here's how they do it. They literally just pile on and pile on and pile on. And you can start to see it. It'll be a little drip, and then all of a sudden it's like the rain today in Georgia. Like it's just a couple of drops, and next thing it's pour, and then they'll back off, and then it'll rain again, then back off. And they just feed this to you stuff. And again, and the first problem you have there is, wait a minute, you've told this story. You're just telling it a different way this time, but it's the same story. And the story is this. Clarence Thomas apparently has taken vacations with people, right? If you read the ProPublica article, which now just came out, and supposedly it's a bombshell. I was talking about this we've talked about this. This is like the 5th, 6th, 7th time this year there's been a bombshell story basically telling you the same thing. A lot of these people in Washington get free junk. I don't care. They all do, right? And the way they play it is, here they're talking about 38 vacations, and they're basically acting as if Clarence Thomas alone got that. That's not true. Everybody gets free vacations from these people. So these rich politicians, and it's not just Supreme Court justices either, it's everybody, right? They all get invited. Here's the way it works. Somebody calls you up and says, hey, Great American Mail, you want to go to Napa Valley this weekend? Yeah. You know what? I can do that. I got all my work done yet. When do we look? Well, we're leaving from Hartsfield tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We got a private jet, the whole thing chartered. Do I need to write you a check? Nope, it's all covered. Yep, just show up there, be there. We got a place to stay, the whole bit, right? I don't have to pay taxes on that. There's nothing wrong with that. Does that mean after they give me that gift, I'm going to do some favors or not? Maybe. If they call me and they want to go play golf at my golf club, I'll probably let them. But that's never been criminalized, and we don't pay taxes on it either, right? I mean, we could get to a point where every time you do a favor for somebody, you know where that's going to lead. I mean, I just want you to understand this. Somebody comes over to your house today, shows up and just, hey, I need a favor. Can I borrow your lawnmower? Do you understand the IRS could say, hey, wait a minute, what's the value of a rental lawnmower? Well, go to Home Depot, you can rent one from there. It's $100 an hour. Okay, so you lend it to your neighbor for 2 hours. That's $200. I want my cut on that $200 of value you gave. They could absolutely do it. I'm not saying constitutionally they can do it. They've never done that. Now, this is part of where this is leading, but I come back to the major point. Ruth Bader Ginsburg did this. Stephen Breyer did this. They've been doing this for ages, right? If you want to tax it, tax it. You can't make it illegal because he's Supreme Court justice, but you can for lower justices, I suppose. Then make them report it, but that's all you can do. But the point is here is, one, it's not criminal, and two, they only mention Thomas. Occasionally they'll throw in Alito, but it's all these people, and it's nonsense. But here's the way you can make absolute nonsense sound good. Here's a clip of it. Yeah. So here's a clip from ProPublica on Twitter. Take a listen to this.
The most complete accounting yet of the high life of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
Okay, so now the story is it's a complete accounting. So this is what they've done. They've leaked this, or not leaked it in the sense of a leak, like people telling stuff, but in terms of they did a story. So they've done 8 stories, and so now it's supposed to be bombshell news that you put all 8 into a complete volume of 1 through 8. I mean, this is just absurd.
Shows much, much more than previously known. More private jets, more fancy vacations, more sporting events. All gifts from mega-rich businessmen and documented through public and private records, plus interviews by ProPublica.
All right. Public and private interviews, right? All this stuff is public knowledge. How did they find out about it? They didn't have to hide it. And again, so what? And again, I want you to understand, we started the show listening to the unfounded allegations that Biden apparently got a lot of stuff. Well, which is it? Is it illegal or not?
Justice Thomas has been living a life of extreme luxury for 30 years, underwritten by at least 4 different ultra wealthy benefactors.
So basically, all that's happened is a bunch of people. Thomas has a bunch of wealthy people, so he doesn't borrow a lawnmower, right? He gets to go on a yacht. I mean, hey, good for him. Now, the 2 things I want to make here. He just said Thomas, over 30 years, has taken 30-plus vacations. He was appointed by Herbert Walker Bush, right? So that had to be between 88 and 92. If my memory serves, it usually does. I think it was 91. I could be wrong about that. But here's the point. Let's assume it was 92 because he was gone by then, right? That's 31 years. So he's taken 30 vacations in 31 years. That doesn't sound like it's alarming to me. Number 2, all right, if he did anything, if any of those people took him on a private jet and then that was brought to the attention and he didn't recuse, that would be impeachable conduct. Everything that they're trying to make into a crime, why aren't they impeaching? Why aren't they impeaching? Because they're full of it is why they're doing it. This is all designed to do 2 things. 1, try to put pressure on Thomas to rule the way they want him to rule. And 2, get to the point where they can, quote unquote, regulate the Supreme Court, right? Because if they can regulate the Supreme Court, then they can eliminate the Supreme Court and there'll be no more check and balances on what's going on here. So, all right, folks, the Hunter Biden stuff and the Joe Biden stuff is egregious to the point of egregious to the point of egregious. I mean, it just is at this point. We need an impeachment inquiry. But apparently Fox News, and this is all, the Supreme Court's real, like they're conservative, right? And I point out to you all the time, here's something that's not conservative. Why are they doing this? Democrats never do that. Well, here's something you never hear on a network that's supposedly conservative. Here, listen to Fox News talking about the Hunter Biden stuff.
I've heard the numbers, a lot of the numbers in a broad way from the Republicans. And yesterday they gave us more bank records. But you know what? With all due respect, the Republicans need better investigators because they've got a lot of circumstantial evidence, but they have not shown that Joe Biden profited personally
they're doing
or
great.
that he broke any rules.
Okay, I'm sorry, but whatever. He's entitled to his own opinion. He's an imbecile. Yeah, a lot of circumstantial evidence. I mean, what do you think Biden's going to do? You think he's going to be dumb enough to be caught on the phone? Like, all right, you wired the $5 million to my brother. Right. Okay. All right. And so what do I need to do again for the $5 million that wired to my brother? Yeah. We got an account. I got it. By the way, he's going to put it in a sack cast and he's going to bring it to my house tonight. I get it. What do you need me to do? What exactly? Okay. Go to Barack. I'm writing this down right now. Barack Obama. Okay. Remember. And you want, what is it? You want prosecutor fired. What else do you want? Right. He's not going to do that, people. Right. He personally profited. What more do you need to know? And again, folks, this is how this is how all the demagoguery and all the hoaxing works. You even get into the minds of people who otherwise, I think that guy's probably, I don't know what that name of that show is, but I don't watch cable news. But anyway, it gets into their minds too. And again, it's subtle, but I can't believe he's dumb enough to fall for that. But anyway, here's Jamie Raskin. He's the rascal that started that. I think he was the one on the show somewhere a couple days ago, and he literally said they have no evidence of a personal bank account of Joe Biden, as if he's dumb enough. I mean, he's dumb, but I mean, you'd have to be just completely imbecilic to have your own bank account and have it wired to your own bank account. Surely, once they get it to your family members, they figure out how to get it to you, right? In other words, again, you know what's evidence of fraud? The fact that you set up 25 shell companies and have 25 different bank accounts. Do you think if you had that, do you think the government be pounding on your door going, why do you have all that? You think that might happen? Of course it would. That's evidence. Now, is it conclusive? Maybe not, right? May not be, but it's evidence, right? And he even says there, it's circumstantial evidence. Do you understand you can get convicted of a crime on completely circumstantial evidence? Of course you can.
We're going to have a campaign that is going to be filled with a lot of whataboutisms. We know the Republicans are going to talk about Hunter Biden a lot here. And I know that a lot of the technical defense of the president with Hunter Biden is, well, the president didn't do anything wrong. But as Michael Kinsley once said, the real scandal in Washington is not what's illegal, it's what's legal. Should there be a code of conduct, something for family members here? Because the appearance of what Hunter Biden did is not good.
Yeah, I mean, we know that there is a lot of, influence in Washington that's based on people's family connections and
Last
family
names
ties.
matter a lot on K Street, as you know.
And I have repeatedly asked Chairman Comer on the Oversight Committee for us to look at that in a serious and substantive.
Okay, he's not going to do that. He's just lying through his teeth. In other words, but he admits it, and I'm glad that, F. Chuck Todd did the same thing. Yeah, we got this great cabal up here. We all make money hand over fist. We don't make Pelosi money. I mean, we only get $100 million. We don't make Biden money. We only get $100 million. But, I'm AOC, and I'm getting $5 million deal out of this thing. That's not bad, and maybe I'll get a chance to be the king. Who knows? Or maybe I'll get a chance to be the queen. And that's what Jamie Raskin is there to do. Again, just completely lie. And the interesting thing about that is one day I hope the American people realize what's going on, because we all literally should stop it. You should go there and you should make what your salary is, and that's it. Period. And then when you come out, you shouldn't be able to use that to make money. I mean, the fact that we're okay with people profiting to begin with is just alarming to me. But anyway, no checks and balances, nowhere coming. Here's something else that's a problem that I want you to understand too, as this problem unfolds. You're creating a generation of people who are, one, insane, and two, going to continue to vote for the outright. I mean, literally, they're going to vote for the people they're going to send to the gas chamber. And Jamie Raskin explains that here, which is, let me explain it very simply. We got a great thing going. We're making money hand over fist, and pretty soon we're going to be able to do it as far as the eye can see. And the American people, you middle-class people that believe in the Constitution and the rule of law, you better hope we just don't decide we want to kill you, right? I mean, but anyway.
Biden beat Trump by 7 million votes in 2020. And what's the difference between 20 and 24? Well, we've just added 20 or 25 million new voters who are young people who are not interested in the party of climate denialism, marijuana, criminal drug enforcement authoritarianism, anti-choice reproduction.
Anyway, folks, and he's right about that. Every year, right now, the way things are shaking out, the middle class dies out a little bit, right? And what you get is part of this cabal of these young people who vote Democrat overwhelmingly, right? Which is to say this: if there's zero cheating, it's harder for you to win if you're on the side of the Constitution and the rule of law. And that's the long game they're playing and continue to play. So here's what I wanted to get to. I've got 3 more windows, and I did not want to go an hour today. So, all right. So here's Judge Ludwig. And again, this is a part of how we got to where we got with this January 6th stuff. Nancy Pelosi didn't have to create an unconstitutional committee. The Republican judges didn't have to let that unconstitutional committee go forward, but they did. Checks and balances failed in both instances. The American public didn't have to, not punish them as much as they should in the 2020 midterms, but they did. So they created this committee. Well, part of the thing this committee, it was all a show. They had to go get Republicans to talk about Republicans, as if that's something. I proved to you earlier it's not hard to do. Now, that means something to a Democrat because they never see anybody dissent. So when they see it, oh my God, people are dissenting? This is really alarming. Anyway, so they dug up this fossil. He's a retired Circuit Court of Appeals judge. Anyway, and he's obviously a rabid anti-Trumper. All right, And his job is to basically be called the conservative judge. And so then it's like, well, think about this. If a conservative judge is saying something about somebody, that must be really bad, right? Because dissent is really bad. So there's a 2-for-1 there, right? We don't have any dissent in our party, therefore dissent is bad generally, right? As if I care what some idiot thinks about some other idiot. Who cares? But apparently we're supposed to care. And of course he's not conservative, but I want you to listen to why Trump's a threat. Take a listen.
Judge Ludwig, we will all remember when you testified before the January 6th Commission and you called Donald Trump, quote, a clear and present danger to American democracy. He is now 3 times indicted, potentially 4. He is by far the Republican frontrunner. Do you think he is still a clear and present danger to American democracy?
All right, now before he tells us what's a clear and present threat to American democracy, I want to say this. I do remember him because I covered the January 6th committee. If you go to YouTube or Rumble and search for it, you can find. I live stream all but one, and the other one I did on video. So he was awful as a witness. I mean, obviously he's clearly biased, right? But his cadence, his performance now has improved markedly. I'll give him credit for that. He's had some coaching. He's had some work done. He's doing better. All right. But I want you to focus on exactly what is the clear and present danger. And the reason they're using that's a constitutional term. That's one of the exceptions to the First Amendment. You do not have the right to say things that end up being a clear and present danger. But anyway, here's one of what the clear and present danger could possibly be to our quote unquote democracy.
I do, Poppy, more so today than he was last summer when I testified before the Congress of the United States for these obvious reasons.
So it's obvious to everybody.
The president has continued to insist and persist in his false claim that he had won the 2020 presidential election.
All right. Now, folks, I can't think of anything more un-American. But, again, at least they're being clear. So what is a clear and present danger to a constitutional democracy is that somebody is allowed to speak and question the government. I mean, folks, this is the type of thing that probably 10, 15 years ago, you would never see that person again. The host of the show would maybe get fired. I can't believe that Americans are accepting this type of stuff. I mean, again, he had all day to try to figure out what's going on. But a couple more things here. It looks like I got two windows. Do I have two? I actually have one window. So this is the last story of the day. So this is Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu's a congressperson out in California. California is basically what the Democrats are trying to create for the rest of it. It's a complete socialist, fascist regime. They can never be unelected. You will, in my lifetime, and I'm 55, let's say I live another 25 years, I will never, ever, ever even sniff a Republican in California. Not even close. Because they've rigged and all these people, quote unquote, vote and they've gotten rid of the people. So that's what they're trying to make into America. And again, there's two reasons why it's like America. Like it's on a downward thing. So they're doing the opposite. They're gaining weight. Pretty soon they're going to be Orson Welles and get fatter and die of a coronary. But before they do that, they can live off the fat of the lamb. So right now, Gavin Newsom is making things that look really terrible. Right? But it takes a long time to gain all that Orson Welles weight, right? Right now, they're, just getting a little around the belly, right? And probably a little overweight. You're not obese yet, but that's where you're headed. And you go to people like, look, they said if I enacted this, I'd be Orson Welles. Look, I'm still in good shape. I'm still in good shape. Yeah, I'm saying if you do it, it's going to take a long time to get there. But Ted Lieu is one of the reasons they want it. He's just, all he does is talk about climate, which is a hoax, talks about Ukraine, which is a hoax, talks about racism, which is a hoax, all these things that are complete hoaxes, and he doesn't have to do a lick of work. He's going to get elected forever. He's going to make millions of dollars. And here's one of the ways that he does it. Elon Musk way overpaid for Twitter. Why is that even relevant? Who cares? But, man, matters to them, right? Elon Musk has the right to follow and promote mind-blowingly racist neo-Nazi accounts. Also, advertisers should take note. Now, here's what apparently happened. And again, I don't need to dig into the story to know the hoax, right? I know what's going on here. He followed some account like all of us do. You see something interesting, click, boom, okay, who cares? I don't know. Turns out they go back and they find that accidentally, right, you might have followed somebody who might have said something. I bet if we dig into it, this person's not a neo-racist. I bet if we dig into it, that Elon Musk had no idea about this person following, and who cares? But this is what they do, folks. This is what fascism is. Right? Let's look through your entire life. Let's look through your entire feed. Let's look through everybody you know or may have met and see anything they did. That's not constitutional democracy. That's not the rule of law. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The Constitution is designed to prevent that very thing. One of the First Amendment freedoms you have is freedom of association. Right? This is exactly what he's attacking. How dare you associate with somebody that I've interpreted to be a neo-Nazi? Yeah, it's my First Amendment right to associate with whoever I want. It's subtle, but you can't look the other way, folks. And they do this stuff 24/7, 365. Anyway, you're all caught up to date with the news of the day. If you enjoyed this live stream /podcast, hope you tune back in tomorrow.